Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Cloud Tool Time Talk. My name is Serena, and joining us today is Ilya, who will be presenting on the topic of, drumroll, Eclipse Che and DevWorkspace Engine. So if you have any questions during this presentation, you can go and click on the Ask a Questions tab, or you can drop them in the chat. And what we'll do is at the end of the session, when we wrap up, we will go there and review any questions that you may have. So without further delay, Ilya, over to you.
Yeah, hello, folks. So today we're going to talk about Eclipse Che and DevWorkspace Engine. So my name is Ilya. I'm software engineer at Red Hat, and I'm Eclipse Che committer. I'm also in charge of the Eclipse Che hosted by Red Hat for OpenShift service. This is by far the easiest way to try Eclipse Che online. So with single click, you got the workspace up and running. And today we are going to talk about the internals of the Eclipse Che and DevWorkspace Engine a little bit later. For now, I just want to say that for those who are new, Eclipse Che is an open source project under Eclipse Public License 2.0, and it provides a way for provisioning Kubernetes native IDEs for developer team. So I really want to start, since it is the community event, I want to start with the community update for the project. So first of all, we have a new website. So on eclipse.org/che, you can find a brand new website here. And this is basically an entry point for the project. So you can learn more about our project here. You can find the getting started guides and the installation guides, and also read more about Eclipse Che with our blog posts. So the second part is that we have a blog post website, dedicated website for new articles. And just this week, we got a contribution from the community about installing Eclipse Che on the Azure Kubernetes Service, AKS. So very interesting read. So really recommend reading this blog post. And there are a lot more here. So from 2022, we have blog posts about contributing for the first time to a project, about reviewing pull requests, and the pair programming, how to achieve pair programming with Eclipse Che and Visual Studio Code. So now let's talk a little bit about the Eclipse Che in general. So Eclipse Che actually a Devfile-centric project. So it uses Devfiles to create workspaces. So, but what is actually a Devfile? So Devfile is a sandbox project on the CNCF, and it provides a kube-native API for cloud development environments. So we can quickly go to the CNCF website, and from there you can navigate to the Devfile.io project website. So Devfile is basically an open standard defined the containerized development environments that enables developer tools to simplify and accelerate workflows. So if you think about the Devfile, the concept is very similar to Jenkins file. When you store your Jenkins file inside of the repository, and Jenkins understands this Jenkins file and creates pipelines accordingly. So the similar idea applies to Devfile, but we define not pipelines, but our development environment. And Devfiles can be actually pretty sophisticated. So in the Devfile registry, you can find a lot of examples. So for example, for Quarkus, you can find that it defines in a declarative way components for your containers that you use for development. It also can refer to the parent Devfile that will be like a dependency on your actual Devfile, as well as providing the commands for building, running, and deploying the application. It's actually possible to start with very minimal Devfile that would just contain the schema version and the name of the dev file. So how we promote this workflow, as I said, so we store the dev file inside of the repository. For example, here on this slide, you can see that in the Eclipse Che block repository that we promoted at the beginning, you can find also a dev file that provides a possibility to run in this blog post from, for example, Eclipse Che. And like the first demo, I want to quickly introduce you the dev file. So I have the Quarkus API example here, and in the repository, I have the dev file, and it's basically the declarative definition of my workspace. So here I have like components for tooling. So it is referring to the universal developer image that we also maintain, that contains all the tooling and a lot of useful utilities for developers that you use on a daily basis, like Git, Maven, and a lot more. Plus, we have the dedicated container for PostgreSQL database, since we use it in this project, and commands for packaging, running, starting, and deploying the application. So let's see how it works. So in the Quarkus API example, I have the dev file, and here I have the badge for starting the workspace, and it's actually a URL that points to our dogfooding instance that we use for maintainers of this project. So I can quickly click on it. I just want to show you how it looks like. So it's just a URL, nothing fancy, that points to the repository. So, and if I click on it, so one single click, you get your workspace provisions. So you see that in the progress view, dev file was found in the repository, and we now applying the dev file. So as I said, Eclipse Che uses dev files to create workspaces. So now the file has been applied, and we are about to start the workspace. In this example, we are using the Che code editor. So it's the editor based on the open source version of the VS Code, but we can use other IDEs as well. We'll talk about it a little bit later. So you see that now the project is cloned, and I have like access to my terminal. I have the access to the source code here, so I can preview the Java classes. And what is more, I can do access the cluster itself, because I can execute kubectl command, get namespaces, and yeah, you see I have those available. So I can go to my dashboard of the Eclipse Che. I can see the workspace here, but also from the Eclipse Che dashboard, I can go to the underlying infrastructure. So here I'm running Eclipse Che on Red Hat OpenShift dedicated, and I can access it and see like that actually in my namespace, the workspace plot is up and running, and here is how it looks on the Kubernetes level. And about the dev file, so I have everything I need for starting development right away. So I can execute commands. For example, I have the tasks. So tasks view already contains the commands that I explicitly defined in the dev file. So for example, I can run the package command from here, or start development command, and it will actually execute mvn compile Quarkus dev in the component tools. So you see the during the command execution, we started to download the artifacts from the Maven Central. It could take a while, so I will just go to the dashboard from my editor, and for now stop the workspace. So in this first demo, I just wanted to provide you a quick introduction to how Che works and how we use devfiles to create workspaces. Of course, you can start without the devfile, but if you have a really detailed devfile that describes your development environment, this would improve the user experience. Of course, we will start with the empty workspace. We will use just the universal developer image. But if you need something fancy, for example, PostgreSQL, you need to explicitly define it in the devfile. And as I said, on devfile.io, you can find all the details about how to create a powerful devfile, as well as the documentation and examples. All right, so now let's talk about new and noteworthy. So first of all, it's of course a switch to the DevWorkspace Operator as the Workspace Engine, and I'm going to talk about it in details on the next slides. Second is that we have the pair programming support for Che code editor using the code together VS Code extensions. Again, on the Eclipse Che blog, you can find more details about that and how it works under the hood. Other than that, we decommissioned the keycloak. So previously, we used keycloak as identity provider. Now we use native OpenShift or Kubernetes OS, and we decommissioned the keycloak completely. So what does it mean? That if all the user identification is managed by the cluster now. So you don't need anything in between like keycloak. The problem with that is on some Kubernetes flavors, on most Kubernetes flavors, you don't have the OS set up by default. So you need to provision it explicitly. For example, on Minikube, we install Dex. And for other flavors, you can install your own identity provider and set up the OS accordingly. On OpenShift, it's built in, so we use it by default. There are no need to set up anything else. And the last but not least, there are a lot of UX and admin improvements. So we now have a possibility, for example, to configure the notification headers from the custom resources, and we also generate better URL prefixes by default when we just spin up the instance, so the URL looks better than before. And now let's talk about the main change, and the switch to the DevWorkspace Engine. So how it used to work previously. So I started to talk about the devfiles, but devfile is not a super new concept. So it actually incubated from the Eclipse Che project itself. So it was kind of internal specification for workspaces. And we had a lot of things in it, like editor definitions, plugin definitions. Then we use this devfile version 1 by our dashboard. And the key component of the previous architecture was Che server, which used the Kubernetes client library. It's a Java library. So with this library, we created the workspaces. And workspaces are basically the set of the Kubernetes resources like pods, deployments, secrets, and config maps. So this is how it used to work. Now the situation is different. So first of all, devfile is a separate tool and editor and project agnostic specification. So it's separate project under CNCF sandbox, and it's any tool, not only Eclipse Che, can leverage the devfile and use it accordingly. So Eclipse Che uses the devfiles to create the workspaces. So we use this devfile also by dashboard, but now we don't use the Che server itself, but we use the DevWorkspace operator, which basically the Kubernetes operator and Kubernetes controller, which creates the workspaces for us. So what does it mean in details? So first of all, it's improving of provisioning the Kubernetes resources. So we don't fall back on the Java library anymore. We use native Kubernetes API for that. Then, since we are using the DevWorkspace engine and it is like Kubernetes controller, it runs behind Kube API server that is designed to scale horizontally. And all the data is persisted in key value store etcd. So, and it's designed to be highly available. So we now better support the rolling update strategies, and basically this is one of the biggest improvements. The next thing is that universal API, because workspaces are now the Kubernetes objects, and I will show you in the next demo how it works. And this means that you can manage your workspaces using the kubectl command or Kubernetes dashboard or OpenShift dashboard. And this is another very important improvement for example, administrators. So it's like universal API. Everybody who knows Kubernetes will be also very easy with their workspace management. The second thing is the simpler design, because Che server was a pretty huge component that was in charge of multiple things. And their Workspace Engine is now in charge only the creation of the workspaces and managing of those workspaces. And the fact is that we wrote this operator from scratch and address a lot of fixes, and of course it's cleaner from the architectural standpoint. And there are a lot more improvements for administrators and users. So as I said, for users and admins, you can use like kubectl or Kubernetes dashboard. So we don't fall back on key clock anymore. We use native Kubernetes API and OpenShift API for that. And yeah, the operator itself is also installed in the all namespace mode. That means that it can manage pretty much all the namespaces on the cluster, and you can create your workspaces like pretty much everywhere. So here is how it looks from the DevWorkspace Operator perspective. So we use devfiles to create based on the devfile, we create the Kubernetes resource, which is called DevWorkspace. And in spec, it basically contains the devfile definition. This DevWorkspace is managed by DevWorkspace Operator, and it creates the objects on the cluster. So now I think we are ready for the next demo. So I will go to my cluster, and here I have Cloud Tool Time demo namespace. So currently I don't have anything here. So I can now check status of the namespace. So Cloud Tool Time demo. And I have a few samples here. And I can apply one of them. For example, the tnext. So what I can do now, I use kubectl apply -f tnext YAML. Okay. And this is supposed to create the dev workspace for me. So if we go back to the cluster, you can see that the workspace is starting. So it's workspace pod. We can execute kubectl get dev workspace. And here you can see that it says that, okay, now I have the TNX dev workspace that is starting. I can describe the dev workspace TNX. Okay, also I got all the details in the YAML format available. So let's take a look. Okay, on the cluster, we have the workspace up and running. Let's check what kubectl says. Kubectl get dev workspace, and here I have the URL in the info. I can click on it, and I will get the access to my TA workspace. Pretty cool, right? So I use native Kubernetes API to create the workspace by simply applying the kubectl command. So you see we have the web Node.js sample here in the app folder. We have the basic app.js, so we can also open the terminal, get access to the pods, and what is more, we can actually manage the workspace, as I said, from a terminal or from the dashboard, right? So from terminal, you see how I did the get dev workspace. Let's go to the OpenShift dashboard and find the dev workspaces. I have the TNX created 2 minutes ago. So I can go to the YAML definition now. And you see in the spec, I have the started set to true. Let's switch it off by setting it to false, saving and reloading. And what actually happens, the workspace pod is terminating. So if I go to the workspace, you see that I have now a yellow footer, which says it's now got offline. And if I go to my terminal again and execute kubectl get dev workspace, it will provide me the information that the dev workspace has been stopped. So yeah, this is it for the second demo. So for RAS, what does it mean? So when you use dev workspace, you can use it actually without even Eclipse Che. So you can spin up the pods by using native Kubernetes API, and you can manage them later using kubectl or Kubernetes dashboard or whatever client you prefer. All right, so let's move on and talk a little bit about the problems that we are trying to solve with our project with Eclipse Che. So you probably read or at least heard about this book, and it's called The Phoenix Project. So it's a novel about IT, and it's actually a fiction story and very well written book, a page turner. So it tells us about a project that has a lot of problems in it, and one of the problems is onboarding. So onboarding on a project, when you start working on a new company, it can take a lot of time. So this is a quote from the book. For Phoenix, it takes us 3 or 4 weeks for new developers to get build running on their machines. And this is actually the problem that relatively big companies face nowadays. So the onboarding process can be time consuming because you need to, have a special development environment. You need to download special dependencies. So it's all getting pretty complex, because if you think about it, like what development looked like 10, 15 years ago, for example, if you are a Java developer, so it was Java from front to back, from top to bottom. You had one version of JVM, one version of the application server, and you was pretty much good. So now the situation changed dramatically. So you have multiple microservices, and you have sophisticated infrastructure. So the complexity is different, right? So like in this book, like how they solved this problem with onboarding. So they started to use virtual machines, and I think that the book was written sometime in 2013, and we know that first version of Docker and first version of Kubernetes were released roughly at the same time. So Docker for 2013, Kubernetes 1 year later, 2014. So I think that if the book was written a little bit later, it would probably talk about the containers and orchestration rather than virtual machines for development environment. And also, like when you start development, there are different preferences. So some people like this editor, some developers prefer another one, and it's also like a pretty complex problem because it's a matter of habit. And if you force someone to use this editor, so it might at very least affect the productivity. So with Eclipse Che, we want to provide a way to be like IDE agnostic. So instead of like forcing some IDE, so previously we used to have the homemade IDE based on GWT. So now the idea is that we manage the IDEs, not like providing the IDE, because it's really a matter of taste. And how we actually do this? So with Eclipse Che, you can specify in the URL parameters the reference to the editor that is supported. And by that, so we have a subset of supported editors. For example, in this example, we use Eclipse Che TL latest that is stored in our plugin registry, but we can change it. We can change it to be something different. We can change it to IntelliJ, for example, or Checode. And this is how we see this flow supported. So first of all, the onboarding with one click. So you get the builds running on your machine like almost instantly. And the second one is we provide still the choice for selecting your IDE. And now let's move on to the last demo. And here I'm going to show you. Let me check the cluster first. I'm going to show you how we see this this flow. So yeah, I'm going to terminate the previous IDs. Log in here to the cluster again. So yeah, nothing is running. Now I can get back to GitHub and open my project. And let's imagine it's my first day at work. So I'm assigned to a new project and I have an issue assigned to me. So on this project, there is the certain problems that the filter doesn't work on the landing page. And here I have some screenshots. So the application is about the restaurants. So it's basically an aggregator of the restaurants where you can see the restaurant and the particular dish and menu with a particular price. And apparently the filtering based on the restaurant doesn't work. So no matter what you input, it returns the empty result set. And what is interesting here, so I have a couple of badges. So first of all, for TIA, then for VS Code, then for IntelliJ. So I can choose the editor. So let's try this VS Code. So I'm just clicking on the link, and it's going to spin up a Checode workspace based on the open source version of the VS Code. So you see it's applying the Devfile now. And we are waiting for Workspace to start. In the logs, we can see that the Workspace is provisioned, the deployment is there, and Workspace is now up and running. Okay, so let's try it out. I have the problem with the restaurant name filtering. So it's apparently a food resource controller that manages my restaurants, and there is a problem with this endpoint. I can also preview the JavaScript code that actually has a couple of functions in place. So I see that the search function basically gets the input from the input field and sends it to the endpoint. All right. So what I can also do now is to execute some commands. So I think that Devfile that I have in the project already have some commands for starting the development environment, for example. So I execute the ambient compile Quarkus dev on the component tools, and it's going to start downloading the Maven artifacts. In the meantime, what I can do is take a look at the extensions. So I should have a few extensions recommended for my workspace, and I would probably install them all. So it's Quarkus, good, test runner for Java, GitHub pull requests, and code together. So yeah, let's start with code together. Okay, it's installing. Pretty cool. So it's installed now, available. So I can see that I can access the code to get the sessions. If time permits, maybe we will try it out. I can also try the GitHub pull requests. So yeah, let's try it out. So it's installing the extension for me. So all done asynchronously. So in the meantime, I can probably take a look at the source code. So GitHub pull requests still installing. Okay, so we can also install the test runner for Java, I believe, and the Quarkus itself. I think it should be helpful. I can also see that I have some debug configuration available. So that might be useful for debugging. And I see that the application is up and running now. So let me open it in my browser. All right, so from Workspace, I can see that there is a food resource and it provides some API endpoint for getting the food from the database. That's good. Let's open the landing page and try to reproduce the issue. So the issue was about the fact that if I provide the restaurant name, okay, I got the empty result set. So let's try it out. So I can refresh it. Local deli, still nothing. So some problem with the endpoint. Okay, what I can do now is probably I can start the debug session. So I can launch the debugger, and I can put a breakpoint somewhere here for my food resource. I think there is debugger is still in the attaching, but if I now press the local deli, the food bistro, I think that there is some problem with debugger, but I think I get the gist here. So that in the it's attached. Cancel. No, I don't want to attach it. Let's try it out. Again, filter. Okay, to return the bad gateway. Okay, so I got the session. So I think it's probably a networking delay. Sorry, folks, demo effect here. But I can see that, restaurant name is a Fruit Bistro, and it's trying to get the name. And then if I go down to the stack, I get the invoker exception here. So I think that I pretty much got the gist what's going on here. And the problem is that I don't use the right attributes. So I think I should be using restaurant name instead of name here. So what we can do now, so Quarkus should redeploy it automatically for me. But what we can do now is we can actually open another container, and what we can do is try to deploy this application on the OpenShift from our workspace. So what I can do now is I can execute their package command from my workspace, and it will execute the ambient clean package. And since I have the Kubernetes extension in my POM XML, it would also generate me the Kubernetes YAML that I can apply in my workspace. So what I actually want to do, something that is possible from the workspace, and I have a pretty simple example here. So if I go to the project Cloud Tooltime demo, right? I think it's empty. So if I run ocget pod, there will be nothing. So our previous pod related to the workspace that we created using kubectl is now gone. So what we can do, I have a pretty easy template here in the template folder. It's the hello world template for deploying the application from the workspace. So what I can do now, I can apply this template. So if I do OC apply template, and it's hello JSON, right? So what is going to happen if I go back to my cluster? You can see that hello OpenShift deployment has been created. So I did it from my workspace, right? So I applied this command, and what actually happened, if I open the networking, I can see that the dedicated route was created in this Cloud Tooltime demo namespace, and I can open it and it will say hello OpenShift. Okay, so pretty cool. And can we do the same for our application? So I see that nvm clean package is now finished. So what I can do now, the thing is that in the target folder, I have the Kubernetes YAML generated for me, but let's do it like in a little bit more fancy way. So first of all, let's spin up a Postgre, right? What I can do is use some command for creating the PostgreSQL right from my terminal in the workspace. So I can actually use the following command. I have it as part of the dev file, but I will just execute it right away. So what is going to do? It's going to create the new PostgreSQL right in my namespace. So if I go to Cloud Tooltime Demo namespace, you can see that the PostgreSQL is there. But the thing is, it uses the PostgreSQL service for providing the access to the database. And I think we need to actually do the same in our workspace. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go to the application properties. Here. In the resources, I have the reference to the database. So I'm going to use the PostgreSQL. And what I can also do is running so I need to rebuild the artifacts probably so that the new data source is picked. So terminal, let's rebuild it again to make sure that we have the right resources. But in the meantime, actually, I want to reference some specific image to my new deployments that I craft from my workspace. So can I actually build images from workspaces? Yes, the answer is yes. Absolutely, you can do this. And in our Docker folder, I have the docker.jvm image that it's possible to build using Podman. So let's wait for a minute so that the Maven build is done and we have the right source place. And now let's get back to our Podman, our terminal. And here I can actually do the Podman. And here I can now build the image. So I can run the podman build command right from my workspace, and it's going to check if the image destination supports signatures and trying to copy all the relevant blocks. So let's wait a little bit. And after that, once we do the podman build, I think we'll need to do the podman tag, and then we'll push the image to quay.io. So I will open the quay.io in the meantime. Here I have my repository for Quarkus API example. And the images here. So I can now do podman images, but here let's tag it accordingly and call it cloud tools tool time. And then we do the podman push, also right from our browser. So copy podman push and paste the cloud tool time image. And it also should be pretty fast push. So in Quay, I should be able to see the image available, right? So in the tags, if I do the refresh, not yet there. I think we're still waiting. Okay, that's done. Refresh. Cloud tool time is there. Okay, pretty cool. So we did the podman build, podman push right from the workspace. But let's get back to our things. So as I said, in the target folder, we should have the Kubernetes YAML file generated for us, right? And now let's do reference the cloud tool time tag from the workspace, right? So it should be something like that. I will save it, and I can now apply this template in my cloud tool time demo namespace. So I do go to target. So the template is generated, so I can put target, then I go Kubernetes, and then I press Kubernetes YAML. Okay, and we see that service account, role binding, and deployment has been created. So if I go back to my console in the cloud tool time, I can take a look what pods do we have now. And we have the hello OpenShift pod and Quarkus API example pod. And here we should be able to see that it's now connected to the database correctly. And it actually uses the containers using cloud tool time tag that we just built from our IDE, right? Okay, so now let's see it in action. And I think that we are missing one more piece. So we probably just need to create another route. Let's call it cloud tool time. Select the service, so it will be Quarkus API example, and target port will be 80, and we just press create. And we'll see if the traffic goes to cloud tool time. Okay, we deployed the application. So now let's see if the bug is fixed. So I can now execute Fruit Bistro, and it should return only Fruit Bistro for me. Works. Perfect. Let's do one more test and choose local Delhi. Only local Delhi dishes are returned. So now I think we are ready to provide the pull request. So I can execute git status, and I can git add -a, and I can git commit fix filtering. On the landing page. fat fingered commit. Okay, and now git checkout. Fix filter. And now get git push fix filter. So you see all my credentials are for GitHub, since I have the token already available, and I can, by the way, preview pull requests that are opened and issues that are assigned to me from my workspace. I can also open the pull request, right? So for fixing the filtering issue, and I can create it and request a review. So that's pretty much the flow I wanted to promote you. So the problem with onboarding can be solved in the Eclipse Che way when you get the editors available and you can choose one and start development instantly with full access to your Kubernetes cluster and to Git. And to wrap it up, I just want to provide you an update what's going to happen next. So we want to improve the Git zero config Git zero config for OS flow. So this means better support for GitHub, Bitbucket, and GitLab. So whatever OS provider are you using. So we want to have it really minimal from the configuration standpoint. We want to improve the better and provide the better getting started experience. So it's repositories without devfiles, and there is a story that as a user, I want to have a possibility to start from scratch, create an empty workspace that should be available very soon. It's already possible, it's just not very well exposed on the UI level, but we are working on that. We want to provide the support for built-in container images. You saw it in the demo. It's still work in progress. We want to polish some things, but it's should be soon available. So stay tuned and follow up our blog post. I think we'll have a dedicated blog post for that. And addressing technical debt. So if you follow up on our mailing thread, so we are going to archive a lot of obsolete repositories, including the obsolete samples. And the last but not least, since we look at the future of the project as more like cloud native, so we want to use etcd and use secrets and config maps and other Kubernetes resources as much as possible. So we still have the PostgreSQL database, but it's actually the obsolete component that we are going to remove fairly soon. You can find the issue references in this slide, and I think that that's pretty much everything I wanted to tell you. Thank you very much. On eclipse.org.che, you can find all our getting started guides, documentation, blog posts, mailing list, and link to Mattermost. If you want to chat, we'll be really happy. So thanks, folks. And I think we have a couple of minutes for questions.
Perfect. No, thank you so much for the excellent presentation today, Ilya. So yeah, it's just a reminder that if anyone has any final questions, to add them in the Ask a Questions tab or in the chat before we wrap up. So we are looking to book more Cloud Tool Time webinars throughout 2022. So if you're interested in presenting, feel free to fill out the form. I'm going to be linking that in our chat. It's there right now. Just going to go quickly look in the Ask a Questions tab. There's no questions there. And there's no questions in the chat neither. So again, just a huge thank you, Ilya, for everything. And thank you for everyone who attended today's session. And I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, folks. Thank you, Serena.
Thank you. We'll see
you. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.